In this video, we're going to talk about how we can actually apply what we've learned about solving percent problems with applications of percent. So if you recall, there were two different ways in which we could choose to solve a percent problem. One using the equation and one using a proportion. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to mix it up back and forth. I'm not going to use just one way, and I'm not going to do both ways in each problem. So figure out what you're most comfortable with and go ahead and solve it that way, but know that you can use the other way as well. Okay, and always remember that when you are solving word problems, you need to make sure you answer the question that's being asked of you in the problem. So don't just give me a number, but let me know what that number really means. Okay, so let's look at this problem. A student took a 150 question test and they answered 114 questions correctly. What percent of the problems did the student answer correctly? So sometimes I like to take a word problem and I like to think of it in terms of the percent problems like we had before. So I could think of this problem as 114 is what percent, okay, because that's what it's asking us, of 150. Okay, so I just took the points from the numbers from our problem and I put it in here. 114 is what percent of 150? Okay, so then I can go ahead and solve it. I'm going to do an equation on this one. Okay, 114 is, that's our equals, what is our variable? Percent, remember, we multiply by 0.01, and then of, where I multiply again, and then 150. Okay, so I go ahead and I simplify this, and I'm going to get, oops, you go ahead and simplify it as well, and we get 114 equals 1.5x. Okay, double check that if you need to. Divide by 1.5, divide by 1.5, and I get, well, maybe you get, x equals 76. Now, have you done the math that you need to? Yes, but remember we have to answer the question. Okay, so what percent of the problems did the student answer correctly? Okay, so we can say they answered 76% correctly. Okay? All right, let's take a look at another one. 42% of the students at Matthew are females. If there are 2,247 female students, that means in total, how many students attend Matthew? Okay, so again, I like to think of this as setting it up as 42% of the total students. So 42% of, we don't know how many there are, that's our of what, 42% of what is our 2,247, okay? Because 42% of them are female, and we know that that is equal to 2,247, but we don't know what our total population is, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and use the proportion on this one. So remember, percent over 100 equals is, the number is 2,247 over the of number, which is our variable, we don't know. So cross multiply, and you get 42 times x equals 2,247 times 100, or 42x equals 224,700, so 224,700. And now we're going to divide by 42. And sometimes you can think about these problems and you should ask yourself, well, will it be larger than 2,247 or will it be smaller? Think about that. The total population. Should it be larger or should it be smaller? Well, I get x equals 5,350. And that's bigger, which makes sense. So 42%, that's not quite half of our students are female, and that means that our total population should be a little bit more than double this number, and it is. So we can say there are 5,350 students at Matthew. All right, and we answered our question. So sometimes the problems that you work out with percentages will involve a percent increase or a percent decrease. And these are a little bit similar to working percent problems, but you need to consider what the change is within the problem. Okay, increase means it gets larger, or decrease means it gets smaller. And remember that we're always comparing it to our original amount. Okay, so let's look at this one, for example. The value of a new car was $24,500. When it is driven off the lot, the value dropped immediately to $20,335. Okay, what is the percent decrease in the value of the car? Okay, so what I want to know is this decreased amount, what percent of that is that of the original amount? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out what is the amount that it went down. So we're going to take our original amount and we're going to subtract the amount that it ended up at, and what we're going to find from here is the amount that it actually dropped, and that's what we're going to work with. So we know that it went down a total of $4,165, okay, just by driving it off the lot. So what we want to know is this $4,165 is what percent of our original amount, and that's of the 24,500. Okay, so we're looking at the decreased amount, not the new value, but the amount that it went down. Okay, so again, I'm going to use a proportion again on this one. Our percent is our unknown, so I'll put that over 100. And our is the 4,165. And our of is 24,500. Okay, we cross multiply, and I'm going to get 24,500 times x, and that equals 41. Oops, that's not a very good 4. Let's try that again. That is 4,165 times 100. So just keep working on simplifying here. And then we're going to solve this by dividing. There's another bad 4, but I'm not going to get this one this time. You get the idea. And so when we divide, what we're going to see is the value that we have for percent is we get x equals 17. Now I'm running out of room here, but I still want you to answer the question that it's asking. Okay, so the car decreased, you get the idea, I'm abbreviating there, by 17%. Okay, make sure you answer that question. What was the percent decrease? Okay, the car decreased by 17%. And we have just a couple more. Okay, how about this one? The Jones family bought their house in 2007 for $213,000. Today their house appraised for $221,520. What is the percent increase in the value of their home? Well, the first question is, how much did it go up by? So I know you can actually do the calculation there by figuring it out. You just have to take the new value and subtract the old value, and you're going to figure out that it went up. It increased $8,520. Okay, that's how much it went up from 2007 to today. Okay, so we want to know this increased amount is what percent of the original value. So which one is the original value? Well, that's the $213,000. Okay. So go ahead and set up an equation. And then simplify. You know how to do this. Oops, got a little ahead of myself there. Remember that 8,520 comes from figuring out how much did it actually go up. Okay, and then we're going to solve. And what do we get? You're probably a little bit faster than me in typing it in, but we get x equals 4. Well, what does that mean, right? You have to answer the question that it asks you. What is the percent increase in the value of the home? So we could say the home value increased 4%. Okay? Make sure that you're answering the question being asked. All right, one more. The value of U.S. exports to the Soviet Union increased from, looks like 1,480 million in 87 to 2,768 million. It's a little weird way of writing it, but that's okay, in 1988. What is the percentage increase? Okay, so again, we're trying to find the percentage increase, so we have to figure out how much did it actually go up. Okay, so that's the first step, figuring out that how much did it actually increase by? Well, it increased by 1,288 million. Now, instead of adding all those zeros on there for the million, I'm going to leave it as 1,288, but I'll remember to put the million in my answer when I'm done. So 1,288 is what percent of our original amount? And that's 1,480. Okay. I'm going to use a proportion on this one. Okay, so percent over 100 and is over of. If you like an equation, that's totally fine. Go for it. We cross multiply. And oops, I'm getting ahead of myself there. And this is going to be times 100. I don't want to take up too much room. I don't want to run out of space. And so we're going to divide, just like we've been doing. Solving those proportion problems, you guys have that figured out. Okay? And so what do you get when you divide? You get x equals, looks like 87.027. Okay? So what was the percentage increase? The increase was 87 point, we'll round it to 2 decimal places, 87.03%. Okay? And that's how we work with our application problems of percent. Remember, you can use an equation or you can use a proportion. It's totally up to you, unless it specifies one way or the other in the direction. And it's really, really, really important that you answer the question that's being asked of you. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.